This is Ed Talks TV. Let's talk about today's episode of Beyond the Gates. Today is August 3rd, 2026. Can you believe it's the beginning of August? Wow. So today we pick up over at Orphe Jeans where Kat runs into Mona. And they're having a nice little reunion. They probably haven't seen each other in a bit. I believe the last time they saw each other and shared a scene together was when Jan and Mona went to visit Kat at Chelsea's at the studio, and they were giving her advice about men. That was like maybe 3-4 weeks ago. So in Beyond the Gates time, who knows how long ago that was, but probably let's say it was like maybe 3 weeks ago in Beyond the Gates time. So they're happy to see each other. Kat is congratulating Mona on the cancer support group that she's doing for her church. She thinks it's great. I just want to pause again and not to be accused of being, a Kat stan. I do like the character. I think she's very entertaining. But again, just to reiterate that people love to call Kat a snob and bougie and all the things, spoiled and all the things. But once again, we see Kat being supportive of someone who we've seen stories where, Mona works for Kat's mother. She could be considered the help by a wealthy family, yet Kat treats her with respect. Now, again, Mona has probably worked for Nicole for a very long time, so Kat grew up knowing Mona, so she does probably have a healthy respect for her anyway. But it just doesn't line up with the dialogue we hear from other characters about Kat and the imaginary plays that happen in some people's heads, some of the viewers' heads about about who Kat is, because she's never we never see her actually being snobby to anyone except for Eva and Leslie, who she just doesn't like, and so she's generally mean to them for good reason. Anyway, Mona sees Randy over at the table, and Kat has already moved closer to where Randy is, and she's like, well, now how do these two know each other? I need to stick around for this. So she stays, at the counter where she is. She sends Chelsea a text wanting to let Chelsea know that she's going to have some more tea to spill. Randy and Mona are having a conversation. They're, catching up again. And the topic of Randy's love life comes up. And Randy's like, nope, I'm single. I'm unattached. The last woman I was seeing ghosted me. That last one would be Lynette. And Mona refers to her as Miss Lick My Fingers. And Randy says she ghosted him. Well, Lynette could be a ghost, very well. Like, if we think that Randy actually killed Lynette, then she very well could be a ghost, or she could just be in hiding, so he could have her put away somewhere, stashed away somewhere. But they talk about their pull towards one another, but neither one of them, it seems, feels like it's a romantic pull. Nothing about their conversation was flirty or romantic. It really was about morality and about the struggles that Randy has been having. He talks about, having a latest assignment that keeps him up at night because he felt like it was crossing the line. Of course, that he's talking about spying on Deanna. And, he's known Deanna since she was a little kid, and he feels like not good about that. But, so he's battling his conscience, and Mona sees that. She says, it could be a slow leak on your soul. And, it was really a nice scene. I've been curious as to how, what the point of this whole Mona Randy stuff has been. Initially, I thought it was going to be a romance, but it really doesn't seem to be a romance. When Randy gets up and leaves, Kat goes over and says, she asks Mona if that's the man in her life, if it's a man in her life. And Mona's like, oh no, it's not like that. So Mona is definitive in that she's not interested in Randy romantically. So that is telling us that this really is a woman who sees a troubled soul, who feels like with some godly intervention, she can show him put him on more of a path of righteousness, or a better path than what he's already on. One of the things that, and what Mona reveals to Kat is that Randy works for Joey Armstrong. So that's a nice bit of information for Kat to have, because now she knows that this guy, Sandy Randy, works for Joey Armstrong. Remember in a previous episode, Kat said that having two names, having an alias, and remember not knowing which was the name, meant that there's some kind of cover, like he's trying to cover something up. So that just fuels more of Kat's brain of there's something definitely weird going on if this guy, one, has two names, is known by two names, and he works for Joey Armstrong. So, like, what's going on here? And so she's going to hightail it over to Naomi's apartment where Naomi and Chelsea still are. The one question I did have that doesn't come up in conversation, it came up later between Anita, Danny, and Vanessa when they were talking about the Randy, Sammy, Hayley stuff. And remember, this whole episode was about Bill, was focused on Bill, Randy, and Sam, and Hayley, Sammy. Bill, Randy, and Hayley was really the theme of this episode, and various characters putting pieces together, finding out new information, and moving this Kill Bill story forward. But one of the things that I've always been curious about that Randy doesn't talk about is his son. Now, if you remember back in the day when Joey was going to kill Randy because Randy had messed up on the Kinney hit, and Doug and Vanessa rescued Randy, and, Joey agreed to let Randy just leave town. Randy said, I have my kid and his mom, will they be safe? And Joey said, you have my word, I won't touch them. But we never hear Randy talking about them. Even in his conversations with Hayley, when they're talking about the $10 million, he talks about the $10 million hitting his bank account, but he never talks about it in reference of how it can help his kid, money he can give to his, I don't know if she's an ex-wife, if she's what their relationship is. If she's just the woman that he has a child, I don't want to use baby mama, but if, she's just the woman he had a child with, whatever the case may be, he never references the money that way. He even said, I believe to Mona, that, he had bills to pay. So it's just a curious thing, because Vanessa, when Danny brings up the Randy, Sammy, and how they know him as two names, and he works for Joe, and Vanessa says, yeah, he works for Joey, and then she says that he has a son, and who lives with the mother. So it's just an interesting thing to me that makes me wonder, is the son and the mother just a cover that Randy has told people, that he's told Joey and Doug and Vanessa? Or did Vanessa just learn that information when they were rescuing him from Joey and she just held on to that information? Because I would expect that if the mother didn't exist and the son didn't exist, that Joey would know that, because a man like Joey would know all of the vulnerabilities of the people working for him. So he would know that the way to get to Randy was through his son and through his son's mother. So if those two people didn't exist, Joey would know, and Joey would call him out on it. So I am assuming they exist, but the question then becomes, why doesn't Randy ever talk about them? Especially with Hayley, because Hayley is his cousin. So Hayley would know that he's got a child, and Hayley would possibly know the mother of his child. And the money would be life-changing for the mother and his son. And also, when Hayley's talking about disappearing to St. Bart's after Bill is dead, where does Randy plan on going? Does Randy plan on just staying in the DMV and working for Joey with millions of dollars in the bank? Or is he setting up a nice life for his kid? He never talks about that stuff. That is such a curious thing to me and makes Randy such a mystery. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people think that he's part of the FBI, that he's undercover, that he's setting Hayley up, that he's working to get information on Joey, although he has so much information on Joey that he could have brought him down by now. So it's just a really curious thing as the direction they plan on going with this character. And I believe the character, it looks like the actor is still filming at Beyond the Gates. So it doesn't, so even if the story has wrapped by the end of year 2, hopefully within the next month or so, if the story has wrapped, it seems as though Randy might have gotten out of it unscathed. We'll see. Maybe he gets out of it with the help of Joey and becomes further into Joey's debt. It's really interesting. It's really, like, I said this last year when they launched the Kill Bill story and gave us Hayley's new background. I really thought that was, at that time, it had become the most entertaining story on the show, with Hayley trying to kill Bill, and then the pacing kind of fell apart. But now we're back at it. And now that we're back at it, it has become the most entertaining story on the show, which is a great compliment. It is the actors all in the story, Hayley, Randy, Bill, all giving great performances. Danny, they're pulling, now Kat is pulled into it. Naomi and Chelsea are pulled into this story. So they're making it an umbrella story for a number of characters, which is always a good thing. The more you can bring more characters into it, the better. The other thing is that we saw Joey and Bill share scenes today where, Bill needed a friendly ear, so he went to Joey because Bill doesn't have any friends. It's hard for him to go to, even though Vernon extended the olive branch and said, if you need somebody to talk to, I'm here. I don't know if Bill just felt awkward talking about his mortality with Vernon, or he might not have wanted a lecture about his morality. He might have just Joey could have just been like a safe space, because Joey has no room to lecture Bill, right? And they kind of tell each other that. But they have drinks, and Joey has a cool line that says, "What's your poison?" to remind us that Bill is being poisoned. They want to keep the audience invested and remind us that there is great jeopardy for Bill. And I liked that Joey was in this scene was in these scenes with Bill. He also shares scenes with Mona, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And I like that they're putting Joey in the mix more. He's shared scenes with Kat. He's obviously shared scenes with Martin and Vernon. He's been at the country club. He was part of the tornado. But I think that a lot of times, one of the reasons why some people might struggle with Joey is that he's very isolated. He's really mostly ever only seen in that room at the casino or at his condo. You don't see Joey, every now and then you might see him, him and Vanessa out at Uptown or at Orphe Jeans, but he doesn't cross paths with a lot of characters. He likes June. He crosses, when he's at Orphe Jeans, he crosses paths with June. He's had some scenes with Leslie, not a lot lately, but they tend to and I think that becomes the struggle with the Vanessa Joey story, is that while it's not a bad story by any means, and I've said since the beginning of Beyond the Gates, that, or since like the middle of last year, that the Joey, Doug, Vanessa story had the strongest story through line of all the stories on Beyond the Gates at the time. And I think that still tends to be true. It's the most sustained story that they've told. And the longest, it's probably also the longest story that they've told from day, that where its origin started the first week of the show and extends into year 2. Remember, Joey Armstrong didn't make his debut on the show until the second Monday, the second week of the show, but Doug and Randy were introduced in the first week, and the gambling, Doug giving Randy the envelope full of cash to pay his gambling debts. So that story, the beats of that story were introduced in week 1 and have carried through into almost over half of year 2, which is like amazing for Beyond the Gates because a lot of their stories don't run this long. So they overdrinks Bill and Joey. So again, I'm sorry. So Joey and Vanessa tend to be isolated with one another, and I think, and now they've introduced Heather, which, I don't care. I don't know how many people actually care about Heather or care about a Joey, Heather, Vanessa storyline. I do, from the spoilers, it seems as though Heather is ingratiating herself into the greater Fairmont Crest community. So we'll see how that goes. But my point being about Joey and Vanessa, Joey tends to be super isolated in his story with Vanessa. And while Vanessa is, she's got Nicole, she's got Danny, she's got her children, she interacts with a variety of others. She interacts with Leslie. So she interacts with a variety of other characters outside of Joey, while the same can't necessarily be said for Joey. So I like that he's not being as isolated, that they're pairing him in scenes with people who you wouldn't normally, off the top of your head, think about Joey sharing scenes with. And that's great. John Lindstrom does a fantastic job as Joey. He's an amazing actor with an incredible career. He shouldn't be isolated. He should be a part of the fabric of Beyond the Gates. I still say move him into Fairmont Crest. He should have a membership. He should have a house there. That's just it. Like, now that they think of him as a hero, the board took him to lunch, wine or direct, whatever it was. They took him to lunch because he saved Abby from Young and the Restless from a falling chandelier, and he helped lift the tree. He found Martin under the tree and helped lift it off of him. I think that it would make sense for Joey to use it as, and it would make sense for the character and who this character is, to use it as leverage to get something, right? Because that's what characters, characters always want something. This, you have to ask the question, what did this character want? What does the character want? What does the character think he wants or they want? And why does the character think they want it? And what will the character do if they get it? So, and Joey wants, one of the things Joey wants, well, he wants respect, but he also wants legitimacy in the community. And we know from last year that he was turned down from a membership at Fairmont Crest. So a membership at the very least is something he should be leveraging. But I think there are far too many characters on Beyond the Gates who don't live in the gated community. And excuse me. And I think that you've got to start moving more people into the gated community. Why Kat would buy a condo outside of Fairmont Crest is beyond me. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm hoping that's the road they go down and they start moving more people. And Joey would just make sense. Now, I don't know that Joey living in Vanessa and Doug's house makes sense. I think that Deanna would probably burn it down. But Joey buying, and they have that Barrington Towers that really should have just been a part of the Fairmont Crest community. A lot of times, gated communities with single family homes and the Duprees have a lot of land in Fairmont Crest, but a lot of times those communities also have condos. And so it would have made so much sense for Barrington Towers to exist in Fairmont Crest that Kyle could, even though he's leasing his apartment or whatever it's called in Barrington Towers, it would make so much more sense if it was within the Fairmont Crest community, and he could be leasing it from the owner. The owner could be off in Europe for an undisclosed amount of time, and he's just leasing it, or it could just be a rental property that somebody owns and Kyle is leasing it. Barrington Towers, I think, existing has a lot of opportunity for characters to live in the same place, but it should exist within Fairmont Crest. I, for one, they say it's 10 minutes away. I, for one, wouldn't mind if just one day they said it was in Fairmont Crest and just called it a day. I think it's a retcon that they could do and nobody would really care. Anyway, back to Bill and Joey. They're discussing Bill's recent hospital stay, his health, his mortality. They're both talking about, how they think about their mortality. And Bill has been reassessing his life, reassessing everything, thinking about everything, and thinking about unfinished business. And he did come to Joey for a favor, ultimately. He wants Joey, if anything happens to him, to look after Joey's family. Now, Joey's like, well, why would I need to look after your family? They're the Duprees. They have plenty of security. But, Bill just wants to make sure they're all taken care of. And, nothing, happens to them if he were to die. Now, Joey says, I'll agree to that, but you have to, and the other part of it is, Bill is like, yeah, the Duprees can take care of themselves, they can have security, and be safe, but they won't get their hands dirty. And Joey's like, yeah, he's like, so I'll do it. I will look after the Duprees if something happens to you. Oh, but you have to promise me that if something happens to me, you will look after Vanessa. So they're once again solidifying that Joey really is in love with Vanessa. It's a warped love by any means. He killed her husband. He had her husband killed. He just triggered and manipulated her daughter. He's manipulative to Donnell in a lot of ways. A little softer though. I think he hates Deanna. I think he likes Donnell. But Joey does think of Vanessa as his family and he's protective of her. And that also tracks, I think, with where they're probably going with the Heather, Vanessa, Joey story, in that we can see that Heather is very territorial with Joey, and she probably does not like Vanessa and doesn't want Vanessa and Joey together, and that Joey is thinking that now with Heather back in the picture, Vanessa could be in danger or he could be in danger. And he wants to make sure that if something happens to him, that at least Vanessa will be looked after. And if, Heather were to go after Vanessa, at least Bill is keeping an eye on her. At least that's my take on it. But, excuse me, Mona ends up coming into the card room, and she and Bill exchange a exuberant hello. I guess Mona's moral compass is okay with Bill cheating on Danny and marrying Hayley. Because no judgment. She had no judgment for him. She hugged him. They embraced. It was so good to see you. Bill said, I would never think of seeing you in a place like this. And she said she just felt like playing cards. Joey says, you're in the right place. You came to the right place. So, and we've seen Mona at the casino before. After the anniversary blow up, Eva was there playing cards and Mona was there. And that's when Mona told Eva that she didn't forgive her, that she was grown and she could have made her own decisions when it came to Leslie's plan. So So it's not unusual. It wasn't something that was out of character for Mona to do, to to show up at the casino just to play cards. But she definitely came there today with an agenda. So after Bill excuses himself and leaves, she sits down and asks Joey to play cards with her. So she's winning a lot of money. But Joey says, "You don't seem like the woman who just walks into a casino." Now, obviously, Joey was not there the last time, and this was like over a year ago, so he doesn't know that Mona was there. You don't look like the woman who just comes and walks into a casino to play cards. And he says, "So what are you playing for?" And she says, "How about Randy Parker's soul?" So Joey says, "Well, you wouldn't want me to fire him because then I would be taking away his livelihood, and that would be," and I'm paraphrasing, but basically it would be unchristlike. And for Mona to want something like that. And Mona says, "No, but maybe give him work that doesn't keep him up at night." So again, it's about Randy's struggle with his morality, his conscience, and Mona is there to try to assuage, not to assuage, but to convince Joey that maybe he can help Randy in his journey to a better path. Joey can't make any promises, but he does tell Mona that she's very good at playing cards, and she said, "I never said I wasn't good at playing cards. I just let you make your own assumptions." And Joey says, "Well, you're welcome here anytime." And, so they had a nice exchange. Again, it's interesting the way they write Joey, and John Lindstrom does such a good job with it because he's like the mobster with a heart of gold. See Sonny Corinthos on General Hospital. But Joey, but the thing about Joey is Joey knows he's not a good guy. I think that's the difference. I think if you were to put Joey and Sonny in a room together and you asked Sonny, "Are you a good person?" I think Sonny would say yes with it, but with an asterisk. "Well, I do the things I have to do for my business and for my family." I think Joey's like, "Nope, I'm not good. I'm going straight to hell," which he mentioned to Bill. And even I think Mona had a line about there is, praying for him is basically useless. And Joey, when she left, said, "I think you're right, Mona." So, saving his soul, there's no hope to save his soul. Like that train is gone. And he said, "I think you're right." So Joey knows that he's not a good man. Joey knows that he's a killer, that he's a manipulator, and he takes advantage of vulnerable people. And that I really appreciate in a villain. I want villains to do bad things without some justification in terms of, "Oh, I grew up poor." Like Joey, we know Joey has a sad backstory with his father, but he doesn't use it as a crutch. It's just something that is a matter of fact. It's just like, this was my life. But Joey is unapologetic about his villainy, which I appreciate. I just appreciate it. I want villains to be villains without... Hayley is the same way. Right now, we don't get a sob story from Hayley about why she's been conning men for all these years or why she's trying to kill Bill. She just wants the money. She's just... Every time she's conned a man, it's about wanting the money. It's not, "I was abused, I was this, I was that, I didn't feel loved." It is, "I just want their money." And I appreciate that because sometimes it's as simple as that. Now, characters can be layered and complex, but the thing that they want can be as simple as the thing that they want. And that is and that can be the motivation. That can simply be the character motivation without a lot of depth and deep underlying reasons, right? "I'm a criminal because I like doing criminal things," is Joey's. And Hayley. Randy seems to be the one person struggling with it, not giving, he talked today about growing up with nothing and growing up in a rough neighborhood in Philadelphia and all that stuff. And how Doug got out of the life. He got out of Philadelphia. He went to the DMV, went to medical school, went to Banneker, did all the things, became a cardiac surgeon. But Joey stayed in the life. He stayed in the criminal element and eventually came to the DMV, reconnected with Doug, and started working for Joey. Now, Randy, though, although we know he's got a sad backstory in terms of just growing up poor and probably becoming a criminal because it was the thing that he could do to survive. Like, he probably did it out of survival. He is teetering that line, walking that line where he's questioning his morality, questioning his conscience, and wondering if, and understanding right and wrong, good and bad. And I think that they're probably doing that because they see something in the actor, because he's very good at portraying Randy. I feel like when I watch Randy, I'm watching a fully formed character. This actor knows who Randy is. And I think that they ultimately want to make this character viable for a while. Now, whether he'll remain a criminal or end up, going on to a more honorable, type of job remains to be seen. But I do think they're doing the work to lay the foundation that a life of crime and working for Joey isn't necessarily Randy's final destiny, and that there could be more and better for him down the line. I just hope that if they do go that way, they still allow Randy to keep some edge to him, because because again, he is conspiring. It seems that it is poison now. A lot of people thought it was water that Hayley was giving him, and that Randy really wasn't giving her poison. It's poison. He's conspiring to kill someone. So this is a character with edge. They have to figure out how to not completely whitewash him and wipe all his sins away and just make him all of a sudden this good guy. Kind of like Grayson is just kind of like blah now. It's like, who gives a damn about that character? But I think that what they're doing some character work with Randy so that he can ultimately be viable down the line. And even if the character had to go away for a while, I think they're doing enough to make him interesting that if he were to return to, the DMV, to the Fairmont Crest community, audiences would welcome him and be interested to see what he's doing next. And he might be getting some kind of redemption story. So it'll be interesting. I'm super curious as to how Randy and Hayley remain viable on the show. I definitely think there's a way. I've thought about it more for Hayley than I have for Randy, but I definitely think there's a way that Hayley remains on the show, they pull away the mask, they pull away this polished version of Hayley that she presents to Danny and to Dupree's and Bill and to the larger Fairmont Crest world, and they make her the Hayley that we see when she's in the presence of Randy, and the Hayley that we see when she had the confrontation with Leslie, and she grabbed Leslie and was like, "You come after me, you'll be sorry." So I do think that there's definitely a way to keep Hayley viable, but with the edge that we see that person who is Val. And that'll be the other thing. Does Hayley become Val at a certain point if she's unmasked? So some good stuff. They did some really good character work today on the show. Over at the country club, Danny and Vanessa are talking about the sunglasses that Danny left over at Bill's house accidentally. And, Hayley sent Danny a picture of the glasses, "Not my style, stay out of my house." Danny got a kick out of that because she knows she got under Hayley's skin. Vanessa wonders if Danny left the glasses there intentionally, but Danny works very hard to convince Vanessa that she didn't. Now, I think that's absolutely true, because why run around the country club asking about lost and found for the sunglasses if she had intentionally left the glasses at Bill's house for Hayley to find? But it's a nice little, moment to remember that, like, Hayley hates Danny not because she's jealous of Danny in terms of losing Bill to Danny, but Danny is a complication. Danny could potentially get in the way of Hayley's plan. And that's what makes Hayley hate her and need her to stay out of her and Bill's lives. Hayley ultimately breaks the sunglasses in anger. Anita overhears Danny and Vanessa talking. They ask her what's going on with her. She's at the country club to get a massage, which she says is okay. She talked to her radiologist, radiology oncologist, and the masseuse just has to be careful. They talk about the fact that she's getting ready to do the Barbara project with the Articulettes, with EP with Barbara's vocals, unreleased vocals that include Barbara. I'm over the Barbara guilt, and I understand, like, it's something that, can linger with you. But one, I think that, like, you did the concert, you did the trust fund. Now Leslie is incredibly wealthy. You did the concert, you paid tribute to her, you recognized her as the lost articulate. Anita had that incredible moment at the stage, after the concert, where she asked for Barbara's forgiveness with Barbara's picture up, and then the lights flickered. I think that's, like, for me, that felt like closure, and I want more for Anita in story than Barbara's guilt, than the guilt of Barbara. I just need more. Now, I do wonder if this EP will result in the emergence of Dante Green. I'm assuming that once Leslie hears about the EP, that she will want to be involved in somehow. Is Dante Green Leslie's father? It's kind of curious that Leslie has not asked Anita, or asked Anita to ask Sharon or Tracy if they have any idea who Barbara was seeing at the time that she, they can do the math. They know how old Leslie is. Was she seeing someone, or had they completely lost touch with her? Now, Anita had, but I believe in story that Sharon and Tracy had still been in touch with Barbara. So do they know if Barbara was seeing someone? And were there rumblings that Barbara and Dante Green had something going on? I don't know, but I'm kind of wondering if that's why they're still focused on talking about Barbara and talking about doing this EP. Now, I know we're only a year and a half, almost 2 years into the show, and so, of course, Anita's backstory is still going to be prevalent and important, but I just think that it felt like we got the closure that not only we needed in the story, but Anita needed after the Articulates concert. And she also sent Barbara and Tracy off on tour. So she did all the things to make amends for her part in the breakup of the Articulates. And I just am ready. I'm ready to move on. I don't know how other people feel about it, but if you have a different point of view, please share. I understand that guilt can weigh heavy on people and, live with you for a very long time. But from a storytelling standpoint, I would like Anita to be motivated by more than just her guilt for, Barbara and Barbara's death. But they end up telling Anita about how Hayley kicked the girls out of Bill's house, which Anita gave face. Anita could not believe it. And then Danny talks about how she thinks Hayley might be cheating on Bill. Anita's like, my massage can wait. Let's talk about it. They go to the family table. Danny brings up the Randy Sammy. Is, Hayley cheating with, Randy Sammy? Vanessa doesn't think that is really a possibility because Randy has no money. But again, you can cheat. That, Hayley could just be like, I don't like having sex with Bill. We know what the answer is, but the answer could be as simple as she married Bill for his money, but doesn't really like being with Bill. And even I think Danny, or somebody, one of the characters today actually alluded to like maybe like that Hayley doesn't actually love Bill. It might have been Kat. And so, but yeah, like Hayley could just, like the assumption could be that Hayley married Bill for money, doesn't like Bill, doesn't love Bill, doesn't like sleeping with Bill, doesn't enjoy it, so she found it from somebody else. And that, you know, and it has nothing to do with money, but she's kind of being Randy's sugar mama. That would be, like, it's a reasonable assumption. I think like them putting together that Randy and Hayley are cousins right now is a bit of a stretch. Like, I don't know that you can come to the, or if related, you can just kind of leap to that conclusion. I think that assuming that there's something sexual going on is reasonable, but you can get to the, maybe they're trying to get rid of Bill part of it, even with the assumption that they're having an affair, because, oh, she found a man that she really would rather be with. She doesn't need his money because she would have Bill's money if she got rid of Bill. That's where, and I'm wondering if that's the road Kat will end up kind of going down until she starts doing background checks. Tomas comes back this week. She's going, I know from spoilers, she's going to try to get him into this. I'm wondering if she's going to try to use like whoever they were using to get background on Lynette. I hope Kat just does a simple Google search of Hayley, whatever her last name was before she became Hamilton, and sees that there's not a lot about Hayley online either, and make the Hayley-Lynette connection that, hey, there are these two people that we think were friends before the mugging who both have very limited exposure online. Another coincidence? Is that another coincidence? Right? So then Anita says, I was never going to say anything, but I caught Hayley and Kyle Abbott after the tornado, and it definitely looked like something had been going on. So, you know, there's just more little juicy tidbits being, you know, put out there. And I think, did Danny, now I'm forgetting, I think Danny might have mentioned it to the girls when she went over to visit them and they were talking, and she told them about the stuff that she found out about Hayley and Randy. But I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I think she did. Somebody tell me, did she say it? So Bill and Hayley meet for lunch at the country club. She tells them how she went over to the girls to apologize. She did go over there to apologize. Naomi kicked her out. So that was good. Keep up that energy, ladies. And Bill and Hayley has a line where she tells Bill she wants him to get exactly what he deserves. Another hint that something terrible is coming for Bill. Danny also had a great line in today's episode where she, you know, they're as talking about Hayley, and she said that Hayley could chew gum and open her legs at the same time. Great line. Great. And for daytime, that's crazy, but loved it. It was just such a delicious piece of dialogue. Vanessa calls Randy to get together. Now, I was like, oh my God, is Vanessa going to blow up that people are starting to be suspicious of Randy and Hayley in a bigger way? And I think that is going to be the case. So then what happens? So they talk about Doug, and that Randy is the reason why Doug became a doctor, because when they were living in Philadelphia, they got beat up, you know, they got jumped. Randy got hurt really badly. There was nothing Doug could do for him. And then Randy woke up in the hospital with Doug by his bedside, and Doug promised himself that he would never be in a vulnerable situation where he felt that helpless and couldn't help someone again. And that's why he moved to the DMV, went to Banneker and became a doctor. But Joey stayed in the criminal life, right? So Randy stayed in the criminal life and, you know, ultimately came to the DMV and started working for Joey. Vanessa, they talk about the guilt of moving on with their lives, even though they miss Doug. Vanessa, when did you stop moving with you were moving on with your life while you were married to Doug and he was alive. I don't understand. And Randy knows what you were doing. So who are you telling this story for? Because we know what you were doing. You know what you were doing. Randy knows what you're doing. So your little sob story absolutely makes no sense. Bad wife, bad widow, bad mother. But ultimately, Vanessa tells Randy that he was Doug's family, and that's why she wants to make sure that he stays safe, and that Joey isn't the only dangerous thing in his life, that the DMV is filled with a lot of dangerous people, including Bill Hamilton, if you, go into the wrong person's house. So I think when we pick up tomorrow, Vanessa's going to spill the beans that people suspect that he is having an affair with Hayley, which then begs the question, will Randy and Hayley amend their plan or will they accelerate it? That's the big question. The other interesting tidbit, Vanessa also said should she feel guilty about enjoying her life now, like so soon? Again, you were enjoying your life before Doug died. With Heart Attach, with Diego, with whoever else, with Joey. Who are you telling this story for? We know, you know, Randy knows. And Ghost Doug knows. Another bit of information, when the girls, Chelsea, Kat, and Naomi were talking about Hayley cheating, Naomi was like, oh, my father insisted that in my prenup, I put in a clause that if Jacob cheated, he got nothing, which was a curious piece of detail to me because this is a family that allows strangers in without doing one bit of background on them. But Bill marries this woman who just came into his daughter's life and married her without doing one piece of background check on her. But this is also the man who puts make sure that there's a clause in the prenup for Naomi that if Jacob cheats, he gets no money. It's just so bizarre. The inconsistencies of the logic of these characters can be crazy to me. Naomi is confident that Bill put the similar clause in his prenup. I don't think we've heard Hayley talk about the prenup, but maybe that's going to come up now that people are talking about the idea that Hayley's having an affair with Randy. Maybe she will mention, I've got a prenup. If I cheat, I walk away with nothing. Why would I do that? But also, connect the dots. Catlock, connect the dots. Why, if she cheats and walks away with nothing, but if Bill dies, she walks away with everything. And she and her lover can live happily ever after. I need Kat. Without Kat on the case, these people would be sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this longer recap of Beyond the Gates. I really enjoyed today's episode. I thought it was one of the stronger Monday episodes they've had in a while. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my recap. I posted a short video today about a show called Proud on HBO Max. I hope you go take a look at that. It's about 10 minutes long. I didn't do a really deep dive into it. It's a show that I don't think many people have seen. I haven't seen many people talking about. So I just really wanted to make a video just to spread some awareness about it. I think it's a really good show. Starts off a little slow, but by episode 8, I'm totally invested, and it ends with a really interesting cliffhanger. But each episode in between is really great. It's an incredible character story and character study. I watch it. I really encourage you to watch it. But again, thank you for watching this video about Beyond the Gates, and keep coming back to the channel for more about all the things that I'm watching, because Ed watches and talks television.